Good morning, afternoon, evening, or good night. Professor Clifford Treblemaker here with another episode of Ask and Answer. Now, as a reminder, I'll be doing the asking, and our conductor, David Allen Miller, will be doing the answering. And here he is now. Hello, David!
Hello, Professor. It's so nice to see you. How are you?
I will not dignify that with an answer. Today, we have some questions about what happens when things go wrong. When things go wrong. David, what is the strangest thing that's ever happened to you during a concert? Not counting something that I've done.
Well, let's see. There have been times when all the lights have gone off in the middle of a concert. That was terrifying. Oh, but there was one wonderful time, actually. It was a terrible time, but a wonderful time at the same time. It was when I was working in Los Angeles. I was the assistant conductor of the great Los Angeles Philharmonic, one of the world's most famous orchestras, and there was a big, terrifying earthquake. Fortunately, not too many people were seriously hurt, but it pretty much shut the town down. But it turned out the next morning, the orchestra and I were supposed to go to a school and do a bunch of school concerts at the school. So, being very brave musicians, we headed out to the school way out in Torrance somewhere. And it turned out, of course, that all the schools had canceled the buses, and so the whole orchestra got to the school, minus maybe 2 trombonists who couldn't get out of their neighborhoods, and assembled on the stage at the school. And exactly one class of 3rd graders showed up, about 20 kids. And we waited, and nobody else showed up. And so we decided we would play a concert for this lovely class of 3rd graders, which we did. So we gave them a gorgeous concert with 100 members of the Philharmonic for these 20 kids, who I hope appreciated it. And then our tuba player had a great sort of time showing them his instrument, and then we sent them home. But that was one of the more unusual concerts I've given in my life.
Wow, David, that sounds like a very harrowing episode of baton twirling. Now, David, what happens when someone plays a wrong note?
Well, you know, Professor, what we have to do whenever anybody plays a wrong note, don't you?
Well, it's usually Andrew, so I usually just scold him for a good half an hour.
Well, what we do is we stop and we yell, "Oh no, you played a wrong note!" No, actually, we don't do that at all, because that's part of the excitement of live performance. Sometimes people make little tiny mistakes. If you stop and call attention to them, then you'll ruin the whole excitement of the event. But if you just keep on going, people usually don't even notice that somebody made a mistake. So the main thing I want to tell all my friends out there who may be playing an instrument or giving a speech or dancing or singing or whatever they may be doing, don't stop. Keep on going, because even though you know it was a mistake, your audience may have no idea at all. And it may actually be an improvement. Who knows?
Who knows is right. Now, David, have you ever had to start playing a piece over again from the beginning?
We actually have once that I remember. It was because we were working with a very big guitar ensemble, a bunch of guitar players, along with the orchestra. And it was outside and there was a lot of wind. And somehow the guitarists couldn't hear the orchestra, and when it was their turn to come in, they didn't come in. And I thought to myself, I could keep going and the thing will just be a mess for 10 minutes, or I can stop and go back. And so we went back and we started. So in those kinds of very exceptional circumstances, it's sometimes best to start over, and there's no shame in that. But I do think at the same time, as a general rule, keeping going when you just have a little mistake is a better idea.
I love that. You got to keep going. Now, David, what happens if a string breaks on a violin during a performance? Does the orchestra have a pit crew like in auto racing, or do they just use one of their own hairs? What happens?
That is a wonderful question, Professor. There actually is a whole, what we call, protocol. There's a whole bunch of stuff you're supposed to do. If, for example, the soloist, the person who's playing the solo part, the star who's standing there, breaks a string, she or he hands his or her violin to the first violinist, who then hands it back to the person behind her or him, who then hands it back until it gets all the way to the back of the section, and then the last player goes out and changes the string. Meanwhile, the concertmaster, the first chair player, has given his or her violin to the soloist, and the person next to him or her has given them their violin, and so the front keeps having violins, and the soloist has to play on somebody else's violin. Now, this is very hard, because violins come in slightly different shapes and sizes. There's a famous story of Midori, a great violinist when she was a kid. She was playing with the Boston Symphony, a famous orchestra at Tanglewood, their summer home, and she broke a string and she handed it to the concertmaster and he passed it back and she took his violin and kept playing. And then she broke a string on his violin and then she passed that to him and he passed it back and he gave her another violin. So she ended up playing the concerto on 3 different violins and everything came out fine, and the last player had to keep running back and forth in the section, but everybody else pretty much didn't miss a note.
Oh my gosh, that sounds wildly confusing. Now, David, what happens if you have to visit the little conductor's room during a performance?
Professor, you know, what's very interesting, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've never had to visit the little conductor's room during a concert. And you know why that is, I think?
You dehydrate yourself.
It might be because I sweat a lot, but I don't think that's all it is. I think it's also that when your adrenaline gets going, when you're performing, when you're that engaged in front of a bunch of people trying to do something that you think is important or you feel is important, you kind of forget about all those bodily functiony things and you get through it. But if I had to run off and use the little boys' room, that would be okay. It's not a big deal. The thing that we conductors fear the most is like throwing up. That's hard because it's very hard to conduct while throwing up. So we pray to our conductor gods that we will never get an upset stomach just before conducting. But if it happens, usually there's a wonderful assistant conductor, like with the Little Orchestra Society, we have our brilliant associate, I believe she's called associate conductor now, or resident conductor,
Jane Kim.
That's right. So if I ever had a problem, Jane Kim is always nearby and so ready and so brilliant that she could step in at a moment's notice. So maybe partly that's why I don't get a stomachache, because I know that Jane Kim is there to save me anyway. So I feel pretty good about the whole thing.
That's wonderful. Speaking of bodily functions, that's all the time I have right now. David and I will be back soon with more questions, more answers, and I'm hoping a grand dinner, candlelit with Joanne. Oh, for the Little Orchestra Society, this is Professor Clifford O. Treblemaker reminding you to take care of yourselves, wash your batons, and help take care of us by clicking the donate button. So long, everybody.
Bye.